how does a buyer who is buying secondary market watches, not brand new, not directly, I'm buying it from somebody, how do you process who to trust and who not to trust? Like, for example, this is why when you and I spoke, I was about to probably dump $10 million into watches. And you pushed me away from it. And you remember when you and I talk, I'm like, listen, Roman, you make me not want to buy these watches, right? I was ready to go buy 10 million set it aside for the family. I know if I buy $10 million worth of cards and I ask the seller to meet me at PSA's headquarters, they'll go there. The president of PSA will be there. Hey, would you mind if we put in a new case and you look at this card and verify it? Great. Can we put it in golden, vault? No problem. Or heritage? Can we do something? Yeah, go to this guy, go to that guy. Great. There's a vault for me to go to. PSA, graded, all of that. So in the card community, back in the days, there was a lot of fraud. Like even the first Hannes Wagner card that Bruce McNall and Wayne Gretzky bought, later on stories came out that card was cut, okay, edges, which made the corner so perfect, but, it's not the same size as a regular Hannes Wagner card. Like, wait a minute, you just, the corners were cut. Yeah, that one right there that sold for $451, I think at an auction in New York, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Back in the days that the two of them bought. And I think nowadays, if you want to buy Hannes Wagner, you're going to spend, I don't know, $1 million to $15 million, depending on which one you're buying, the quality, right? But when it comes down to watches, there is no PSA. There is no BGS. There is no Beckett Grading Service. There is no SGC. How does a buyer trust the fact that they're buying a watch that's not fraud? How do you do that?
You buy the dealer, not the watch. And I've been saying this for 20 years. And I tell people, there's a ton. You want to talk about fraud in the card space. You have no idea how much fraud is in the watch space. I can tell you stories for days. But I tell people, buy the dealer, not the watch, and do your homework. And the number one rule is actually very simple. If it's too good to be true, it usually is. Give you a quick example. A guy calls me up. It's like, Roman, it's like, I want to buy this two-tone Rolex you have for 10 grand. I said, okay, no problem. He's like, but listen, I'm a little hesitant. I got burnt before. So what happened? I said, I bought the same one on eBay, and it turned out to be a fake. This is years back. I go, that same watch trades today for 20 grand. But he goes, you bought it on eBay. How much did you pay? $1,200. I asked him, what do you do for a living? And the guy's like some super doctor. I said, so you went to school for 45,000 years to become this fancy doctor, and it never dawned on you that a watch that trades for 10 grand that you're buying for 1,200 is a little too good to be true? I go, show me the eBay seller. I go on there, and back in the day, eBay allowed this. They don't do it anymore. Guys would put up listings saying, Rolex-like watch. It doesn't have boxing papers. Read the description carefully and look at the price and act accordingly. So they were selling clones. eBay put a stop to that after a while. I said, so when you read all that and you saw that, it didn't dawn on you that you're going to get a fake? It's like, well, I thought it was eBay. I thought it was going to be a good deal. Common sense will always prevail. But today's day and age, you have no idea. For the first 5 to 7 years being in business, I spend more time proving people that they're not going to get a brick in a box from me, and they're actually going to get a real item. Today's day and age, you're protected from every angle.
Well, let's skip that. Let's go to you. So instead of here's a story, right? So Omega says ex-employee is responsible for the $3 million fake Speed Master watch, right? If you can go a little lower and zoom out a little bit, right? So that's, first let's see what the watch is, see what it looks like. So that's the guy right there. Okay, let's go a little bit lower. Zoom in so we can read this. Omega says it's been a victim of organized criminal activity, alleging 3 of its former staff members admitting working with intermediaries to sell a fake Speedmaster watch for $3.4 million. The watch was bought by Omega itself for 3.115 million Swiss francs, 25 times the auctioneer's upper estimated price at a Phillips auction in Geneva, November 2021. Omega told CNN in a statement that it had intended to display the watch at its museum in Bienne, Switzerland, with high-ups in the company believing it be a rare and exceptional timepiece that would be an absolute must for Omega's showcase collections. The item was thought to be a 1957 stainless steel chronograph wristwatch with a broad arrow hands and was described by Phillips as one of the very first and most collectible Speedmaster models. So you can go a little bit lower, Rob. So if these guys at this level screw up, I'm talking about not me trusting you. I want to know you. Like, they come to you in the dealer world. How do you know they're bullshit? How do you know? Because
Well,
sometimes
first of all, notice they said organized crime. This was a scam long coming. A lot of people out there, when it comes to the vintage world, it all comes down to knowledge. You want to buy from the most knowledgeable guy. Why? Because when you're going back to the 50s and the 60s, Rolex has the shittiest records, and so does Omega. Their archive and their record system, they're terrible, right? Patek Philippe probably has one of the better archive systems due to a friend of mine that worked there for 15 years, creating that archive system, sitting in the basement, doing all the research. There's no internet. There's no Google Lens, right? So this is records that you're relying on from the 50s. One of the guys was working for the Omega Museum. He was very knowledgeable in what the watch is supposed to look like. They buy a watch that has the same case, that would have the same type of movement. They did something to the dial to turn it brown, right? That wasn't done naturally. They did something to the dial to turn it brown.
Go back to that, Rod. Go, I'm listening. Turn the dial to brown.
Right? And then what they did is they did subtle little things to show that that is no longer reference X, but it's now reference Y, which is uber rare. You can change hands, you can change buttons, you can do all those things, but it requires tremendous knowledge in the world of vintage to be able to create what we call a Frankenstein. That's what this is. It's a Frankenstein watch, right? It's put together. And it's done in this industry mostly with stuff from the 50s and the 60s from companies that don't keep good records like Rolex or Omega.
So you're saying that's not common for it to be brown?
It can naturally turn brown if it's set in the dark for 20 years. That wasn't done naturally. But there is a process that you can use to make it turn that way.
Got it.
Right?
And does that make it more mystique and more valuable?
Tropical dial. So, for example, the watch I'm showing you here, this watch is just starting to turn tropical. If I put it in the dark for another 10 years, it will turn completely brown.
But does that make it more valuable?
It does, because it makes it a lot rarer, less of something. This is what it comes down to when it comes to vintage watches. So this was done maliciously. It took a couple of years of planning. The original watch that was actually sold in auction. They augmented the watch a little bit. And then eventually, if you take a zoom in to this versus the original auction result a few years prior, you can see certain scratches that match, kind of like a photo match.
Got it.
This was done maliciously. Let me tell you what happens, or at least what I do when it comes to vintage timepieces. What I do is I partner up with an individual whom I trust and who I know is knowledgeable. Because the biggest fear I have is to sell you a watch where there's something not correct on the watch because of my knowledge. If I don't know something, I will reach out to an expert. I have a friend of mine, his name is Adam Golden, Menta Watches, and he's a vintage guy. He's actually an attorney who turned collector, who then said, screw being an attorney, I'm going to be a vintage watch dealer. He knows his stuff inside and out. He lives and breathes vintage watches. So rather than me taking a shot and saying, hey, Patrick, here's this great watch, and you pay me $1 million, and then Patrick finds out, well, the buttons are not original, something is wrong with the dial, it's been reloomed, refaced, repainted, or something like this. This is the worst of it. I'd rather make half the money and have an expert on my side the way I can confidently walk into a room and say, this is a correct watch and this is a watch for you.
So, but how about when you're buying from a private owner who's not in the business? How do you know if the watch he or she is selling is fake?
Well, first of all, I can tell a fake watch from a room away.
How?
Right? Experience. You can't buy experience.
How did Omega screw up here?
Because Omega, this was done by people that worked for Omega in their museum that were verifying all this stuff. You understand? This is an inside job, a big inside job. They're not telling you the whole truth here because they're embarrassed. But when you have somebody on the inside who's supposed to be the guy telling you this is the correct watch, do you know why it fetched so much money? Because the insiders knew that Omega was going to bid on that watch. And you know when Rolex or Omega come to the table in auctions, that's when records are set because they don't care. They keep the paddle up until they win because they want it for their museum.
Got it. Okay. So what else? But when you say you can tell from, like, give me the most basic stuff. Like for me, I can, certain things in my business, I can see if somebody's full of shit or what they're doing because I've been in the business for a long time. So I'm with you. I read that part as well. But I'll be able to say, 1, I'll look at this, 2, I'll look at this, 3, I'll look at this, 4, I'll look at this, 5, I'll look at like, hey, how do you know somebody's, the other day we get an email, hey, I'm stuck at the airport. Can you please send me $2,000? My credit card's not with me. Oh shit, Pat needs $2,000. First step is what? Go check the email. Oh, it's not Pat's email, it's fraud, right? Like basic stuff like that. What are some specific
trust
pointers?
And verify and really process. So any watch that comes in, we do buy a lot of watches from the public. When it comes to buying B2B, I only deal with dealers with whom I have recourse. So if something happens down the line or something is wrong, I know I have recourse. I can return the watch for a full refund. So I deal with trusted individuals. But when it comes to buying from the public, it gets a little bit trickier. So we have a service center. Every single watch that comes in from the public goes to my service centers. I have 3 watchmakers sitting there that will test the watch. I don't care if it's a brand new Rolex and it seemingly looks okay and the paper's okay and everything is okay. It still gets checked inside and out. So the minute that If you open up a watch, a professional watchmaker opens up a watch, they'll tell you if the watch is fake or not, if parts were replaced, if the watch is really new, is it actually working properly? So we do a full-blown test. It costs me to the tune of $30,000 a month to do that, just so you know, just a checking process. Right? That's number one. So you got to qualify a watchmaker to do so. After it comes back from my watchmaker and it hits the sales floor, there's another check. Adrian, my head buyer, who you just met earlier. Again, it's a quick look. It's a quick look now at things like papers and boxes. There's a lot of telltale signs. Again, they all come from experience. But at the end of the day, I make you sign your life away when you sell something to me. If you ever go through the selling process on my website, you'll see that you're going to have to provide all the profit identification. You're going to have to provide certain paperwork, sign a certain contract, right? So people will shy away to try to fraud people like us. They'll usually go after the smaller fish. Guys, I get 1 million DMs a day. You guys are asking me, how do I get into the watch industry? Well, I've been doing this for 22 years. I don't have time to answer 1,000 DMs a day. I try my best. However, all those questions can be asked of me on Minect, and all the proceeds from those will go to my charity.
If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.